All right, this video is going to talk about how urban problems, including the desperate poverty of working class families, inspired a new social consciousness among members of the middle class, and we see that these reform movements begun in the earlier decades gathered renewed strength in the 1880s and the 1890s. The first thing we want to look at are books of social criticism. And it starts off with a book by a San Francisco journalist named Henry George. He published a provocative book in 1879 that jolted readers or caused readers to look a little bit more critically at the effects of the laissez-faire economic theories that were, really popular of the day. George's book was called Progress and Poverty, and this proposed placing a single tax on land as a solution to poverty. More importantly, though, George succeeded in calling attention to the alarming inequities or inequalities in wealth that was caused by industrialization. Another book, a popular book of social criticism, is called Looking Backward, 2000 to 1887, written by a man named Edward Bellamy in 1888. This envisioned a future era in which a cooperative society had eliminated poverty, greed, and crime. Imagine that by 2000, poverty, greed, and crime is going to be eliminated. I would hate to tell Mr. Bellamy that his vision has not quite really met its potential. However, these readers of these books were so enthusiastic that they joined various reform movements and organizations, and they really tried to implement their author's ideas. And both books encouraged a shift in American public opinion away from pure laissez-faire and towards greater government regulation, and setting the stage for the foundation of what will become known as the progressive era of the early 20th century. And so the next thing we want to look at will be the settlement houses. Concerned about the lives of the poor, we talked about the urban slums and the dumbbell tenements. A number of these young, idealistic, and well-educated women and men of the middle class settled into immigrant neighborhoods to learn more about the problems of immigrant families firsthand. Living and working in these places called settlement houses, these young reformers hope to relieve the effects of poverty by providing social services for people in the neighborhood. The most famous one of these settlement houses is called the Hull House in Chicago. It started by a woman named Jane Addams in 1889, and these settlement houses taught English to immigrants. They pioneered early childhood education. They taught industrial arts, and they established neighborhood theaters and music schools. And so you see by 1910 there are over 400 settlement houses in America's largest cities. Most of these workers were civic-minded volunteers, and so they weren't in it for the money. They got paid little to nothing to do this, and they're the ones that really set the foundation for the professional social worker that we see today. Some important people, that are settlement workers in the late 19th century, early 20th century, Francis Perkins and Harry Hopkins, and we'll see them play major roles in FDR's reform programs of the New Deal in the 1930s. Another factor from that came out of this awakening and reform was something called the social gospel. And the social gospel took place in the 1880s and 1890s when a number of Protestant clergymen they really supported and espoused the cause of social justice for the poor, especially the urban poor. They preached the social gospel, which is the importance of applying Christian principles to social problems. Leading the social gospel movement was, like I said, the religious leaders, and once again, they're centered mostly in the urban centers. Speaking of religion, religion and society, all religions during this time found the need to adapt to the stresses and the challenges of modern urban living. Roman Catholics, for instance, gained enormous numbers from the influx of new immigrants, and so we start to see Catholic leaders inspire the devoted support of old and new immigrants by defended the Knights of Labor and the cause of organized labor. Protestants got into this as well. We see organizations like the Salvation Army, which was imported from England in 1879, starting to provide the basic necessities for life for the homeless and for the poor, all while preaching the Christian gospel. And once again, women definitely, women of the urban middle class were attracted to this religious message. People like Mary Baker Eddy, who taught that good health was a result of correct thinking about Father, Mother, God. And by the time of her death in 1910, hundreds of thousands have joined the church that she had founded, the Church of Christ Scientists, popularly known as Christian Science. And so we see the Church of Christian Science being created, which during this time, which you can find one of the Church of Christian Scientists if you go down the road right across the street from St. Raphael's on Falls of Neuse, and there's also one across from the IHOP on Hillsborough Street. And so you once again you see religion playing a central role in these reform movements during the late 19th century. Let's see here. The last part, families, during this time period, and women in urban society. Urban life, or life in the cities, it did place a severe strain on parents and their children. It isolated them from the extended family. It isolated them from the support that you usually get from a village. It takes a village to raise a child. And urban life, it placed a strain on the marriage. Divorce rates increased to 1 in 12 marriages by 1900, partly because a number of these state legislatures had expanded the grounds for divorce to include cruelty and desertion. Another consequence of the shift from rural to urban living was a reduction in the family size. Children were an economic asset on the farm. They were, a cheap and free labor force that was needed in an early age. But in the city, however, the more of a liability. And so, there's just another mouth to feed. So you do see, in the last decades of the 19th century, as we see the rise of urbanization, we see the national average for birth rates and the family size continue to drop. Stay tuned for more lectures and more discussions on some of the topics on American culture out of this time period. Really a focus on the intellectual and cultural movements of the time. This was not my best discussion. I apologize for that. They ain't all going to be perfect. Like I said before in class, keep your expectations low of these videos.